Hello, welcome to the course SJPHY2C02 Optics, Laser and Electronics. The contents of today's lecture is taken from Principles of Electronics by V.K. Mehta. We will continue to discuss topics from Module 4, Electronics. In the last class, we discussed about common base, common emitter and common conductor configurations, and we have seen that majority of the transistor applications employ common emitter connection. Today's class, let's have a closer look at the working of a common emitter amplifier. So, as we already know, here the emitter is common between the input and output. The input side, the emitter base junction is forward bias with bias voltage VBB, and the base collector junction is reverse biased with bias voltage VCC. So here the input current is the base current IB and output current is the collector current IC, and the current amplification factor beta is given by IC by IB. Typically the value of beta is very high. So if you look at the input side, in addition to the input signal, you have the bias voltage VBB, and you need to choose the magnitude of VBB in such a way that the emitter base junction is always forward bias regardless of the polarity of the input signal. Because if VBB is not there, what happens during the negative half cycle of the input signal, the emitter base junction is going to get reverse bias, and that will be against the transistor action. So you need to choose the values of VBB carefully. And during the positive half cycle of the input signal, the forward bias across the emitter's base junction increases. As a result, more electrons flow from emitter to the collector through the base, which causes an increase in the collector current. The increased collector current produces a greater voltage drop across the collector load resistance RC. So you have an increased output at the collector side. And during the negative half cycle of the signal, the forward bias across the emitter base junction decreases because now the signal is acting against VBB. So the forward bias decreases. As a result, the collector current decreases. This results in the decreased output voltage. In other words, the voltage changes in the opposite direction. Thus, in both half cycles, you are going to get an amplified output across the load resistance RC. And when no signal is applied at the input side, then what happens? Even if the signal is absent, you still have a forward bias VBB, right? So because of this forward bias, a DC collector current IC is going to flow in the collector circuit, and this current which flows in the absence of an input signal is known as zero signal collector current. So when the signal voltage is applied, the forward bias on the emitter base junction increases or decreases depending on whether the signal is positive or negative. As I said, during the positive half cycle of the input signal, the forward bias on the emitter base junction increases, causing the total collector current IC to increase. On the other hand, during the negative half cycle of the signal, the forward bias on the emitter base junction decreases, causing a negative change in the collector current IC. And if you look at the output current, it has two components. So the output current is IC here. This is the total output current. Look at the notation. I is small letter, C is capital letter. This is the total collector current. It has two components. One is the AC component given by this red curve. This is small I, small c. Then you have a DC component which has a constant magnitude given by capital I and capital C. So the The DC component is nothing but the current which flows in the absence of any input signal. This is your zero signal collector current. So DC component is capital IC, and the AC collector current, small IC, is basically due to the input signal. Okay, so the total collector current, small I capital C, is nothing but a sum of the DC component, capital I capital C, plus the AC component, small I small c. Now, the amplification function of a transistor is frequency dependent. So let's now talk about the frequency response and bandwidth of an amplifier. The graph drawn between the voltage gain of an amplifier and the frequency of the input signal is called frequency response curve. The frequency response curve of an RC coupled amplifier is shown in the figure here. RC coupled means at the input of the amplifier, a coupling capacitor is connected. And why do we need a capacitor? We have seen that capacitor basically blocks DC and allow only AC to pass through. So if you want to monitor only the AC variation in the signal, you use a coupling capacitor at the input. So this is the frequency response. So you can see that the voltage gain AV is maximum at the mid-range frequencies. The maximum voltage gain, you call it as AV mid, and it decreases on either direction. So you have two frequencies, F1 and F2. These are known as the cutoff frequencies, and at these frequencies the voltage gain drops to 0.0707 times its maximum value. So F2 is known as the upper cutoff frequency, F1 is a lower cutoff frequency, and the difference between the upper and lower cutoff frequencies is called bandwidth of the amplifier. So bandwidth is defined as F2 minus F1. In other words, bandwidth is the range of frequencies over which gain is greater than or equal to 70.7% of the maximum gain. In practical terms, if you want to strengthen a weak signal, you need to make sure that the frequency of the signal is within the bandwidth of the amplifier, because that's where you are going to get maximum gain or maximum amplification. Now, why does the gain decrease on either direction? So decrease in gain below F1 is due to the increased reactance of the coupling capacitor, because we know that the resistance of a capacitor is known as reactance, which is frequency dependent. So the reactance is given by Xc equal to 1 by 2 pi Fc. Right? This is frequency dependent. So when the frequency is very, very low, then the reactance is going to be very, very high. So you have a very high resistance at the input side. This decreases the input signal current as well as the gain. So because of the coupling capacitance, the gain decreases at lower frequencies. At high frequencies, the voltage gain decreases due to internal capacitance or junction capacitance. A transistor has internal capacitance across its junction. Right? Why? Because if you look at the transistor, it has two junctions. One is the emitter base junction and second one is the collector base junction. And any junction can act as a capacitor, because if you look at the basic structure of a capacitor, it has two conducting plates separated by a small gap, right? So in this case, instead of a conductor, you have semiconductor, and if you look at this junction, it is not perfect. There are microscopic gaps, localized gap at this junction. So this can act as a small capacitor or a capacitor with negligible capacitance. So inherently, the junction of a transistor has some finite amount of capacitance associated with it. And the capacitors can act as bypass path for the AC signal, right? So at very high frequency, so if you look at the the reactance formula here. When frequency increases, the reactance decreases. Right? So at high frequencies, the junction capacitive reactance become low enough to prevent normal transistor action. So you can visualize the capacitance as shown in this figure. So at the emitter base junction, you have capacitance Ce prime, and at the base collector junction, you have another capacitance Cc prime. Okay, so capacitance has some finite resistance associated with it, but when the frequency increases, the resistance become very small. And current always follows the path of least resistance. More current flows through the path having less resistance. So at high frequencies, the AC signal will, most of the AC signal will pass through these capacitors, bypassing the transistor action. So you lose the normal transistor action. As a result, the voltage gain decreases. So if you want to get maximum amplification for a given input signal, you need to always operate within the bandwidth of the transistor. The process of giving a fraction of output energy of some device back to its input is known as feedback. And feedback is very useful in reducing noise in amplifiers and making amplifier operation more stable. Depending upon whether the feedback energy aids or opposes the input signal, there are two basic types of feedback in amplifiers. One is positive feedback and other is negative feedback. Let's first talk about positive feedback. Here, the feedback energy. By energy, what I mean is either the voltage signal or the current signal. The feedback energy is in phase with the input signal and thus aids it. So if you look at the feedback circuit, so you have a transistor amplifier which introduces 180-degree phase shift between the input and output. A fraction of the output is given to the feedback circuit. The feedback network introduces another phase shift of 180 degrees. So you had originally 180 degree here. Here there is another 180 degree, 180 plus 180, which is 360. So if you look at the feedback signal, this is now in phase with the input signal. The peak matches with the peak. So these two constructively overlap, right? So in this way, the positive feedback increases the gain of the amplifier. But it has certain disadvantages. The positive feedback also increases the distortion and instability of the signal. Therefore, positive feedback is seldom employed in amplifiers. But one of the important applications of positive feedback is in oscillators. We will discuss this in the next section. Negative feedback. Here the feedback energy is out of phase with the input signal and thus opposes it. So once again, if you look at the diagram, the amplifier introduces a phase shift of 180 degree between the output and input. Part of the output is given back to the input of the amplifier through a feedback network, but here the feedback network doesn't introduce any phase shift. So the total phase shift between the feedback signal and the input signal is 180 degree. 180 degree means the peak now corresponds to the valley, right? So this will give rise to a destructive overlap. As a result, the negative feedback reduces the gain of the amplifier. So even though the gain is reduced, it has certain significant advantages. Basically, it reduces the distortion and noise in the signal. It improves the stability in gain, and also it increases the bandwidth of the amplifier. And because of these advantages, negative feedback is frequently employed in amplifiers. Let's now look in more detail about the working of a negative feedback amplifier. Okay, so this is the feedback network. A part of the output of the amplifier is fed back to its input through the feedback circuit, and the feedback is out of phase with the input by 180 degree radians. Okay. The gain of the amplifier without feedback is AV. The negative feedback is then applied by feeding a fraction mV of the output voltage E0 back to the amplifier input. So Eg is the input voltage, E0 is the output voltage. A fraction of this output voltage mV is given back to the input. So this feedback voltage is mV multiplied by E0. And as I said, since this is negative feedback, the feedback signal is going to act against the original input, right? So the actual input to the amplifier now becomes the input signal voltage Eg minus the feedback voltage mV multiplied by E0. And since this is an amplifier, the output E0 must be equal to the input voltage multiplied by gain AV, right? So I can write output E0 equal to input Eg minus mV E0 multiplied by gain AV. Now we expand the left hand side. AV Eg minus AV mV E0 equal to E0. Take this term to the right hand side. E0 is common. Take it outside. So E0 into 1 plus AV mV equal to AV Eg, or E0 by Eg equal to AV divided by 1 plus AV mV. And what's the meaning of this left hand side? E0 is the output voltage, Eg is the input voltage. Output voltage by input voltage is nothing but voltage gain, right? So the voltage gain of a negative feedback amplifier is given by AVF equal to AV divided by 1 plus AV mV. So here the numerator is nothing but gain of the amplifier without feedback, and you are dividing it with a factor 1 plus AV mV. So basically, in the case of a negative feedback amplifier, the gain is reduced by a factor of 1 plus AV mV. And the gain reduction is applicable only in the case of voltage gain. If you look at the current gain is pretty much unaffected by the negative feedback. As I said before, even though positive feedback is seldom employed in the context of amplification application, it has another important utility, that is oscillators. An oscillator is a device which converts DC power from a supply into AC power in the load without the application of an external signal. So basically it converts DC into AC. There are two fundamental types of oscillators. One is harmonic oscillator, which generates sinusoidal waveforms. And the other is a relaxation oscillator, which generates non-sinusoidal waveform. And a transistor amplifier with proper positive feedback can act as an oscillator. It can generate oscillations without any external signal source. So this is the diagram of a positive feedback amplifier oscillator. So as I said before, the amplifier introduces a phase shift of 180 degree, and the feedback network introduces an additional phase shift of 180 degrees, so that the feedback signal is in phase with the input signal. So these two constructively overlap, and this improves the gain. Now there is a switch S at the input side. So when the switch is closed, the input signal is applied to this network. When the switch is open, the input signal is removed from the network. Let's first close the switch. So this is like the normal positive feedback amplifier. So when you give input, you can see oscillations at the output. But these oscillations are primarily due to the input signal, right? But if you look at the definition of an oscillator is a device which produces oscillation without the application of an external signal. So when I close the switch, I cannot call it as an actual oscillator, right? So I need to get rid of the input signal and somehow achieve oscillation at the output. So what I do, so initially I keep the switch closed, I apply the input signal and make some oscillation in the output. Suddenly, now I open the switch. So the input Vin is removed now. Now, even though the input signal is removed, the feedback Vf from the previous cycle is still applied to the input of the amplifier, right? So amplifier will amplify this feedback signal and send it to the output. So once the signal comes to the output, invariably a portion of this output is fed back to the input of the amplifier through the feedback network. So once again, the amplifier receives another input cycle, so it produces the corresponding output. Once again, a part of the output is fed back to the input and this process repeats. So if you look at the entire operation, the circuit needs only a quick trigger signal at the beginning to start the oscillations. And once the oscillations have started, no external signal source is needed. The essential components of a transistor oscillator are: one, a tank circuit. This is basically an LC circuit consisting of an inductor coil L connected in parallel with a capacitor C. So an LC circuit can produce oscillations at frequency f equal to 1 by 2 pi square root of LC. So by changing the values of the inductance and capacitance, you can play around with you can tune the frequency of the oscillator. And the second component is the transistor amplifier. It basically amplifies the oscillations from the tank circuit using the DC power supply from the battery. So the job of the tank circuit is to provide the trigger signal at the beginning. And third component is the feedback circuit, which basically provides positive feedback to aid the oscillations. Now, in order to produce continuous undamped oscillations at the output of an amplifier, the positive feedback should be such that the feedback voltage MVAV equal to 1. The feedback factor MVAV equal to 1. So this is known as Barkhausen criterion. And what is the significance of this particular criterion? If you look at the voltage gain of a positive feedback amplifier, this is given by AVF equal to AV divided by 1 minus MVAV. Hope you recollect the derivation of voltage gain of a negative feedback amplifier. It was 1 plus MVAV. Here only difference is that instead of plus you have a minus at the denominator. Okay. Now look at the Barkhausen criterion. Barkhausen criterion says that when MVAV equal to 1, you have uninterrupted oscillation at the output. So in this equation, when MVAV equal to 1, the gain AVF tends to infinity. And when can you have an infinite gain? Gain is nothing but output by input, right? So when gain is infinity, either output should be infinity. But in no practical oscillator, you can have infinite output. So the other possibility is input being 0, right? So this is the physical implication of Barkhausen criterion. When MVAV equal to 1, you get a definite amount of output voltage even when the input signal is 0. Thus, once the circuit receives the input trigger signal, it would become an oscillator generating oscillations with no external signal source. So that's about the discussion on transistors and transistor amplifiers. Now, before winding up, I have an important question. So you know that a transistor amplifier basically increases the strength of the signal, right? Suppose you have a 1 volt signal, it makes it a 10 volt signal. Now, does this mean that the operation of an amplifier violates the energy conservation principle? Because conservation principle says that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to other, right? So when I make a 1 volt signal into 10 volt signal, where does this extra 9 volt come from? We know that it cannot appear from nowhere, right? So does it mean that the conservation of energy is violated here? Definitely no, right? Because this is a universal principle. So if you look at the diagram here, you have two bias voltages, right? Two DC voltages. So basically, this extra 9 volt come from the DC power supply. So in other words, a transistor during its operation, it utilizes the DC bias voltages or DC source voltages to strengthen the signal, to strengthen the input signal. So it is in no way against the conservation of energy principle. So that's about our discussion on analog electronics. In the next class, we will discuss about digital electronics. Stay tuned. Thank you.